Let me start sharing.
So let me start maybe when you are sharing the screen. Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, my colleague Martin von Weissenberg is going to talk about cultural awareness and coherence. And this is the first principle of the organic agility principles that we are now going to walk through. Some of you probably already attended a few of the other webinars in the organic agility series. So now at this point, we are starting to go the principles one by one. So it's very nice that the first one will kick off today. You are very welcome to chat with us during this session. So use the chat and chat to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can take part of your comments. For any questions that you have, please use the Q&A so we can have a look at the questions in the end of Martin's presentation and answer as many of them as possible. This is a recorded session, and the recordings will be shared together with you who are attending the webinar. We will send them in an email to you and then also publish it on our websites and social media. So please also follow all of our channels, follow Martin, follow me, and you can have the recording as well. And without anything else, I'm going to hand over Martin to you, and I will be back when you are done with the presentation.
Thanks. So what we plan to do is to hold a short lecture of sorts. And while I'm speaking, I won't be able to see the questions that you put in, but we'll make sure to reserve something like 20 minutes at the end. So roughly a half an hour of presentation, and after that, maybe 20 minutes of questions and answers. And let's see how that works out. So this belongs to organic agility, which is, as you can read on the screen, it's a strategic approach for increasing resilience, increasing organizational agility. And it's a little bit like Kanban in that it's something you apply to your organization. And just like Kanban, you need to visualize, you need to understand where you are so that you can then start applying changes or make changes to your organization. And let's dig into that a little bit when it comes to culture. That's the topic for today. So a couple of words about me. That's a picture that is taken about 5 kilos ago. I'm an Agile coach and trainer working for Agile 42 Finland. Usually nowadays I do a little bit more of the leadership stuff and enterprise stuff, but I still enjoy working with teams and working with individuals as well. It's just that people seem to have understood that it's more important to actually work on the whole organization. If the organization, if the leaders are not in support of the Agile transition, if they don't help out, then that's going to be a problem down the road. So that's where we are. Culture broadly is defined as how we do things around here. And it's something that every company has, every organization. I mean, even bacteria have a culture, as the old joke is going. If you don't know your culture, you still have one. It's just that you don't have a grip on it. You don't understand necessarily what it's like. And more formally, it's the set of behaviors that have been established and accepted within the organization. So it's something, culture is trailing a little bit. It's impossible to define the culture up front, but what you can do is you can nudge the organization in the right direction. So all of this and all of organic agility, everything that we are talking about here is based on a wild assumption that organizations are complex. Okay, organizations are complex, and if you start thinking about that, and if you start drawing the logical conclusions, what follows is that we need to use methods that are designed for complex situations. So we need to use, we need to nudge an organization we need to affect the linkages, the connections in the network. And we need to see how we can change those, how we can modulate them, how we can get kind of more of those that we like to see that have positive outcomes and fewer of those that we would not like to see because they have maybe negative outcomes. So in general, more of this, less of that, or to put it another way, we want to make it easy to do the right things in our company and to do those things right. And to this end, we're going to dig into this a little bit later, but we can do, this is called the ABIDE model. It's by Dave Snowden, related strongly to the Cynefin model, if you're familiar with that one. Just wanted to make sure that it's kind of positioned right in your minds. But attractors, barriers, identity, diversity, and environment. So we can help, we can try to modulate our organization. We can insert attractors that make it easy for people to do the things that we would like them to do, and to bring them to a good conclusion. So we can make it attractive to make good decisions. We could make it attractive to bring tasks to an end instead of leaving them open and then opening more and more items. We can also insert barriers which prevent people from doing the wrong things. So we can, for example, automated testing or something like that can be used as a barrier against creating defects in our product. Identity is pretty much about who are we, what kind of people are we in this company? Are we the kind of people who pick up whenever I see a problem, I see a piece of trash on the floor, or I'm working on a document and I see a problem, do I go in and fix that one? Or do I ignore it and leave it for someone else to fix? Or do I file a bug report, for example? So those are three different things I could do. And it depends on the identity, the team identity. What kind of people are we in this team? And I suspect in many companies, people are either ignoring the problem or they might be putting it on the big pile of bugs to fix later. You may want actually to nurture a culture or an identity where people find it easy to actually go in and fix that problem immediately. Diversity has to do with having lots of different people, different ideas, and by having diversity, you're creating kind of friction and heat in your organization to some extent. That heat makes it easier for your organization to expand, to fill the space available. So what I've tried to draw here, kind of an amoeba. There are things that prevent, brick walls that prevent the organization from expanding in some direction. There's kind of glass walls. They might be flexible, inflexible, and so on. If you don't have diversity, it's like trying to make soup. If you don't turn up the heat, nothing is going to happen. Your vegetables are just floating around in cold water, not very appetizing. However, if you turn it up too high, there will be a lot of chaos, and your soup will basically evaporate and burn, and that's not desirable either. So you need to have the right amount of kind of pressure. Diversity is a good way to do that, and you can also, by using attractors and barriers, you can creatively kind of increase the pressure just a little bit, not too much. And then finally, environment is kind of a catch-all for all kinds of different things that you can do. That's not necessarily related to your team, but more related to the organization within which it works. And so the general approach of all companies, we are always on that follows also from the complex, from the assumption that organizations are complex, is that we are always on our way, we are always becoming something new. So I'd like to get away from the word being something and put more focus on the word becoming something something else or something different that is presumably better shaped or a better fit for our current environment. So becoming is a key word. And if you look at all those, if you look at Spotify, Zipgate, Menlo Innovations, Toyota, all of those, Statoil, whatever they are called nowadays, I always forget the new name. It's what's happened there is that there's been an act of becoming. Some person or a group of people have had an epiphany. They have had an idea that we need to apply a principle, and they've started changing things slowly but surely. And over time, the company has become something else. And then we are looking, everyone is looking at that new state of being and saying, ooh, the Spotify model, or hey, let's call it beyond budgeting, or something like that. And everyone suddenly wants to apply beyond budgeting, or they want to start using the Spotify model. But that's not really the important part. Spotify themselves are not Spotify anymore. They are not using the Spotify model as such. And many of the beyond budgeting companies have evolved forward from there. So it's a question of always becoming something new and having in mind your goal. You have a principle that you want to apply, and then steadily and surely you make those changes, and you can insert attractors and barriers. You can change the identity, you can increase the diversity in the company, and you might be able to change the environment that the company operates in. And this then gives rise to a continuous change, and you can track that and you can follow it. Let me show you quickly. Starting out by having, for example, on the wall, having post-it notes and a couple of printed things. And then as time goes by, people start making changes. And this is now a balance between the new processes and the new practices that we are using on one hand, and on the other hand, what people are willing to accept. And then ending up with something that has tight integration into your IT systems, for example, in this case, and is generally a much better version than the one you started out from. But it's not something you can predict. It's not yet like, it doesn't make sense to design what we see here as July 2014. It doesn't really make sense to design that upfront and say, this is now it, this is what we need, and then start deploying it. Instead, you need to make small changes. There's something called the adjacent possible. Let me jump back here for a second. The adjacent possible is something that is just on the border. It's just slightly different, close enough for comfort, but different enough that it makes a difference. Okay. So the adjacent possible is a small change that is easily understandable, easily undoable if it goes wrong, and easily picked up by people without complaints, or too many complaints at least. And these ideas come from your team, and you're able you can, as the person responsible, for example, Scrum Master, or Agile Coach, or organizational developer, the person responsible for driving change, you should pick these ideas up from the people who are doing the work, help them understand what is the adjacent possible, and then help them experiment. And then if it works, you can then deploy that. Okay. So, and why are we doing it this way? I suspect many of you have seen the pyramid of results, or the results pyramid. It's simply the main problem is that if we focus only on actions and the results that those actions give rise to, then we will be struggling when things are changing. So what happens here, if you look at the top half of the pyramid, actions and results, this is the domain of project management typically, and commanding and controlling and pace setting managers. So people tell other people what to do, and if they do those things in the right order, they execute the tasks in the right order and at the right time, we will get results that then somehow give us money. Depending on the company, organization, it can you provide services, or you create products, or you sell those products somehow. And that's management. That's where managers and almost all our project management tools are focused, actions and results. Now, the problem, of course, is that actions, when things are changing and your processes or your manager doesn't have time to rush around and tell you what to do, you need to, at some point in time, figure out by yourself what to do next. And that's where your beliefs come in. So how do you understand your company? What do you think is the right thing to do right now? What would our company like to happen next? And this is going to be a tricky problem. If the company does not have a coherent culture, then those beliefs could be anything. It could be, for example, let's stop working and wait until the manager is available to tell us what to do. Or it could be, let's try to shift the blame. Let's try to make it clear that it's somebody else who is kind of responsible for this, and we are just sitting here waiting for things to happen. Those are not very good. What we could do instead, we would like maybe to have a culture where people believe that we are working together, and I know who is the most, or which team has the most important task currently, and I can go and help if they are struggling. Or we could have a belief where I can continue working if I tell people about my assumptions. So, for example, just today I was listening to a discussion where people were discussing whether to do a Docker image or not. And I feel that maybe a better approach would be to say, hey, our assumption is that we will make a Docker image, and it's based on these and these assumptions, and we are going to continue that probably on Friday. We are going to work on it. And if that doesn't suit some people, then let us know before Friday. Otherwise, we will have to rip up some of the work we are doing if you tell us this on next week, Wednesday. So by making the assumptions explicit, you could continue working, or you can tell people these are our intentions, and we can continue working on that. Now, beliefs are based on experiences. So if you tried making your assumptions explicit and you tried working, and then your boss comes and says, hey, you're not supposed to do that, you're supposed to wait for a decision. After a while, after this has happened a couple of times, most people will just learn that in my experience, it doesn't make sense to try to do things. We just wait. We just wait to see if the decisions come in, and if they don't come in and we try to take responsibility, then we are slapped down again for taking responsibility. So we need to, just the best thing we can do is to shift the blame, for example. So people will learn through experience what the beliefs are, or what beliefs are valuable in this company, which ones lead to praise, and which ones lead to negative feedback, if we can put it that way. And that will then guide your actions and then result in something, in some kind of value. So we want to shift the balance from management to leadership. A good leader can create experiences. I don't mean manufacturing out of thin air, but basically help people have the right kind of experiences. We can set up, Scrum allows us to set up all kinds of rituals. For example, the daily stand-up can be a very good place to create experiences or help people have the right kind of experiences, or the planning meeting maybe. the review and the retrospective. If people experience that the retrospective is useless because we are not allowed to make any changes, then they will just they will start believing that it's useless, and then they will not actually do anything. They will go through the motions, but they will not do this. So what this means in practice is that as a manager, if I want my teams to improve, I need to put quite a bit of focus on the retrospectives. And I want to create an experience where the teams actually feel that when they come to me with a problem and they ask me as a manager or leader to help them fix something that they have figured out in the retrospective, then I want to help them. I want to make sure that they learn that it's worth doing those retrospectives. So I would help them on this. Rituals, storytelling, also changing the identity. Storytelling also incorporates and identity, obviously, or also incorporate the idea of building a history. So the team is not kind of something that exists for a short time only. You collect stories, you collect mementos, and you build up a history over time. Good. This is what we call cultural coherence. Above the line, we could say that this is kind of process coherence, actions being done at the right point in time by people with the right kind of roles and skill sets will lead to certain results. And below the line, we have what we would like to call cultural coherence, meaning people have coherent beliefs and experiences. They are not only coherent with each other, but also coherent with good results. So they are aligned. I've given a couple of examples already, but I just wanted to underline that the coherent culture or cultural coherence in this case means that the company strategy is supported by the culture in such a way that when the actions are unclear or we are doing novel stuff, people have to fall back on their own ways of thinking, that they have similar beliefs and similar experiences, that they know what are the good things, the right things to do in this situation. And that's increasingly important as the predictability is getting worse and the amount of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity is increasing. And that's why after 15 minutes of introduction, we finally get to the first principle of organic agility, which is about increasing the cultural awareness and coherence. And some of the key points here is that the culture exists regardless of what you do. If you don't make it explicit, or if you don't take a look at what you have, you will basically let an important part of your company be random or kind of emerge in an uncontrolled manner. Fortunately, it's possible to visualize culture, and I'll dig into that in a moment. We can also look at which behaviors are kind of better, which are more successful, which are better, and which are worse. That means we can also start nudging the organization. So we can promote those stories that are, or try to get more of the good stuff, okay, and less of the bad stuff, to put it bluntly. And rituals we can use to change the behaviors and habits of people. So making this visible, increasing the cultural awareness and coherence, there's a number of different ways to do this. And people have experimented over decades and decades trying to research things. There's some of these is, for example, speed of feedback. How fast are companies to react to things? Are they just letting things slide, or are they picking things up? Proactive versus reactive is a different take on that. Also, risk appetite is a different take on the same. Are we willing to try things or not? We have more soft things like conflict resolution. Are we stepping up to resolve conflicts inside the company, or are we just kind of suppressing conflicts, which is convenient in the short term, but in the long term it can lead to silo thinking and conflicts between different parts of the company, which is not so fun. We have level of subordination. We have, which means basically how easy do people find it to conform and follow orders, or are they just stepping up and saying, no, I don't, dear manager, I don't think this works that way, and I'm going to do something different. That would be a low subordination level. We have power distance, which is also the way people related to that. It's how people feel. Are people okay with having a long distance between themselves and the decision makers? Masculinity, I tried to actually put in femininity here, but it suddenly turned into a different thing, which is weird. Masculinity and femininity should be the opposite sides of the same coin, but they are not, and that probably tells something about our society, or maybe not. But the most important ones are control versus flexibility. It means basically, are you centralized or are you decentralized? And the other one is extrovert versus introvert. And now we have pulled out these two because if you do the research and you look at different cultural dimensions, these two have the biggest, the greatest explanatory power. So if you study a number of different organizations and you plot them on these two axes, what you will find is that they are spread out more than if you combine. If you have, for example, power distance and level of subordination, you will find that those are correlated somehow, and so the difference is not that big. Speed of feedback, proactivity versus reactivity is also correlated. So these two are the ones that give the largest difference. And now, luckily, somebody has already done this for us, Cameron and Quinn, and they have come up with something called the competing values framework, which is using these two axes very specifically. They have a very interesting paper, which is where they are exploring the literature and bringing up these various dimensions, and then also explaining why they had the research that they did and why they settled on flexibility versus stability and control, and then internal focus versus external focus. Quite a good paper if you're interested in that kind of stuff. So the competing values framework. Let me see. Boom, boom. Bring them up all at once. We have four so-called stems, cultural stems, in this model. And the one that is perhaps, let's start by AdHocracy and explain that quickly. So what we have there is external focus, and we have quite a bit of flexibility. So think of a design company or an architectural agency or something where you have all these creatives they go out, they see different things. It's like a friend who is an architect explained to me that you need to breathe in before you breathe out. When you design, when you draw a house, when you create the blueprints for that house, it's like exhaling. So you're kind of breathing out, and then you need to take a break, and you need to breathe in and get new ideas before you can start on your next project. So it's kind of this way. This is the kind of guys, or this is the kind of culture you could think about. And as you can imagine, it's pretty much sometimes a group of individuals, possibly pulling together, possibly not, and they really enjoy new things and novelty for novelty's sake. Then jumping on to the clan type in the upper left, that's another stem, fairly popular or fairly common, I would say, in, for example, consulting companies. So because you don't know what is going to happen next, your next customer will come with new problems that you can start solving. The best thing you can do is to have a clan, or you have good people, a family, that you can trust. You will help them become better. You can help them increase their skills, and generally kind of build a human development, people development culture where we are collaborating, we are mentoring, and we are trying to generally be good consultants so that when the customers bring you stuff, we can get stuff done. Jumping down to hierarchy, that's where we move from flexibility and discretion. Both of AdHocracy and Clan are high on flexibility and discretion. So we have individuals. It's just individuals that are collaborating. It's just that, are they looking outside to new ideas, or are they looking inside to our own people and the way we are working and how we are collaborating? So hierarchy is now moving from flexibility and discretion. We are moving to stability and control. And what this means is that, for example, as a company grows, then above a certain limit, say 100 people, 150, 200 people, we need to have, we need to start having a chief finance officer. We need to have maybe HR. We need to have processes for submitting your expense reports. We need to start having calendaring systems and file sharing systems. And so it makes sense to, instead of using whatever you have and sending things by email, you start to have common systems. And we start valuing this kind of stability and centralization and control that comes with growth. And we can also, or to combat diversity. So when we are trying to get things together, this is also, if you have a factory, for example, this is the kind of things you would expect. You have it is kind of a bit of a mechanical mindset that comes here. We are auditing high quality is important here. And finally, we have the market culture. This is like Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola. We are competing. We want one more percentage point of the market. It's still centralized. We have the European sales quota. We have the Scandinavian sales quota. We have then Finnish, Swedish sales quotas, the Norwegian and Danish sales quotas. And then we might split it further, but we still have we have a common goal, but we are working very hard with the customers to get those sales done. Can be a bit aggressive at times. And these are the 4 different cultural stems that we are typically seeing in companies. And one of the things here is that these stems, companies will typically have a dominant stem, regardless of where you are. These are not wrong as such. Some of them might be better in the environment, the business environment you're in, or the business domain that you are in currently, and others might not work as well. So the wrong ones will be eventually weeded out, and so certain businesses, certain kind of business domains, certain industries will see a specific maybe type or cultural stem that is becoming more and more kind of established as such. All companies will have different cultures internally. Typically, there will be an organization, or even on a team level, you can find that you start drilling down. Different departments, different teams might have different cultural stems. That's also okay. If you have very, very varying cultural stems or cultural types in your company, then it's going to be difficult to get stuff done. If you introduce a change, for example, you introduce a new system for submitting expense reports, which is clearly something that would drive people down to it's strengthening the hierarchy cultural type. You might find that everyone who is currently in the hierarchical culture type, they think this is great, very well done, let's continue with this. However, people who are on the other corner, the AdHocracy people, they are going to just ignore it as long as they can, because it doesn't fit in their way. It's not the way we do things around here. Receipts, what do you mean? It's stuff that happens to other people. That's why we have a finance department, right? Why can't they take care of it? So that's the kind of thing. So if your culture is very, very diverse and dispersed, what will happen is that your change, when you introduce it, will have very different and uncontrollable, unanticipated side effects, and that sucks. If your company, on the other hand, has cultural awareness, and not only awareness across the company that yes, those guys over in finance, yeah, well, they are that kind of stuff, and the guys in marketing, well, they are, but they are us, they belong to our company anyway. So if you have that kind of coherence and a certain kind of cohesion, you can start introducing small changes, and you can be more assured, or it's the higher likelihood that people will understand it in the same way. And as they are talking and discussing, they might pick it up, and so it will make it easier to make those changes. Let's see. Yep. So this is just, I'm not going to dig into this particular slide too much. It's just that what I wanted to bring up here is that different business contexts, for example, if you are a small startup, you might want to for example, work with early adopters, then an innovative culture might be more important, and the methods would then follow that cultural type. If you're instead working with the early majority, you might want to have more Scrum and XP and a clan-driven culture, possibly late majority. It's where you start optimizing for cost rather than optimizing for value. And so having a centralized control might work better for you. And then best practices, or that's when you have a market-oriented culture. Cool. So the question is, how do you understand, how do you plot your company? Let me see now. Boom, 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 boom. How do you understand where you are on this competing values framework? Where do you start? Well, as it turns out, there's different ways of doing this. There's more or less specific tools, but you can fairly easily take a survey once, for example, and that's good, because then it gives you an understanding of where you are, and it also gives you an understanding of what you can change, what you can do to make things slightly different. However, that's not always sufficient. What you actually want to do is to take a baseline, and then you would like to run the survey continuously. You would like to continuously measure your culture. Tracking, especially if you are starting to experiment with stuff, different ways of working, different tools. You would like, let's say you have 10 teams or 20 or 50 or 100. This is scaling quite nicely, and actually it's easier the more teams you have. If you only have one team, then you can't afford to make those necessarily. I mean, you cannot necessarily afford to make big changes. Okay, if you have 100 teams, you can try quite radical stuff in 1 or 2 teams, because on the whole, it's not that, it's such a small amount of your people. So running the survey continuously is important, because you can then see how things are changing over time. So and you can pull aside your pilot and experiment teams, and you can track them. Do they, for example, in these let's say leader type here, it seems to be quite nicely focused up in clan, but down in the bottom left we see a kind of a cluster. Is this a trailing edge or is it a leading edge? In other words, are these the old stories or the old survey points that we have picked up half a year ago, and now we are getting more and more up in the clan, for example? Or is it so that we started in clan and this is now kind of trailing or going into hierarchy? This is quite, let's put it this way. This could be an interesting fact that might change your approach. So tracking and using this kind of dynamic data is super important. Let me show you a little bit what we have. This is in fact from a specific company. I'm not going to name that, but every dot is representing a decision. Basically an employee is submitting a story, and that story has been plotted on the competing values framework. We are using 4 different perspectives on the culture. One is leader type. So what kind of leadership did we see here? The second one is quality strategies, which is basically how are we doing things? What are the tools that we are using? Theory effectiveness is our beliefs. What do we think is going to be effective? And value drivers is basically the culture itself, which might be lagging. What do we value inside this company? Okay. Typically leader type is something we might be able to change. It's also kind of an anchor or leading edge in such a way that it's bringing people, it's kind of sucking people in. So if your leaders are going up into the clan in this example, it means that sooner or later, also the tools and the quality strategies that we use, our theory of effectiveness, how we understand effectivity, and also our values and beliefs are going to be pulled up into that corner of the competing value framework. So let me quickly look at some, let's open this up strongly. We have a consistency in this company between leader type and decision maker. We have a flat organization structure that's a separate observation, but we can also see that many of the decisions are being made quickly, so right away or within the hour, and we think there's a correlation between these two. We have, I believe that. Okay, this is anyway, says factors influencing the emotion. So do people feel happy or not about this specific event or thing? So time taken and tenure and role are specifically influencing. And now the longer time, the more negative the emotion, and also the longer tenure, the longer the person reporting this has been at the company, also that has a negative influence. The role of the person involved had actually a strong influence, but it's positive. So you need to dig into that also. Problematic decisions, usually if how problematic the situation was, so we can collect that and plot it, so we can see that more positive decisions are kind of less, also the ones that are less problematic. More problematic tend to be negative, quite a strong correlation there. And we can also see, for example, team leaders have to compromise on politics more than team members do, which is interesting, but that's okay. That's what the kind of stuff that we would expect to see. Managers handle the politics. It also means, in my eyes, that the team members are not allowed actually to talk to other teams properly. So that's something to watch out for. But given this kind of information, we can start formulating hypotheses. We can observe the organization, and we can use this to validate our understanding. One more example, company B. These are very smartly chosen alliances or so. As you can see, this one is leader type is hierarchy, and fairly, sorry. What we have here is actually positive versus negative stories. So the positive stories are in the bottom line, and the upper line are the negative stories. So what it seems here is that negative stories have to do with leader types that are strongly hierarchy driven, and also quality strategies, meaning the way we work, the strategies we use to achieve quality. They are also strongly hierarchy and to some extent market driven. Okay, and the positive stories, that's where the leader type is very clannish, and also the quality strategies are clannish or adhocratic. And this was a really strong polarization, for example, in this particular company, that positive stories were generally correlated with more flexibility and decision making in the teams. And conversely, negative stories were correlated with hierarchical and kind of control related decisions. And digging in a little bit more, we can see that most decisions were made by managers and leaders. And we can see that they were strongly, the managers were talking among themselves. There was not so much kind of extrovertism here looking into the market. So mostly peers listening to managers, listening to other managers. Okay. We have, it turns out that the older stories are in the hierarchical corner, and there is a general movement towards AdHocracy. And the question is that if we want to be an innovation company, which company B wanted to become, then they should, this is something that they should strengthen. They want more of this kind of stuff. Okay. And the lower left corner is an anchor of sorts. Oh, that one heard, and not by customers. It's to this. So this is the kind of stuff that you can see if you are starting to dig in. So to wrap up, I'm running slightly late, but we still have time for questions. So we need to visualize our culture. We need to nudge. We have a hand raised. I think I could also stop sharing at this point in time because I don't have anything more to share. Let's see if we have anything. Fia, did we have a couple of hands raised?
Yeah, we have a hand raised, but unfortunately we can't let people speak in the webinar. So please, if it's a question or a comment, add it in the Q&A or in the chat.
All right.
But we have a few questions if you don't want to wrap up anything else.
Yeah, I wanted to spend a minute on just going back to the beginning and basically saying that this is all about having a network, and it's all about trying to understand how to create more of a certain kind of thing, good stuff and fewer of the bad stuff. Okay, that was all I wanted to say. And we have 10 minutes left, and I think let's jump into Q&A.
That sounds very good. I'm going to start from the latest question. So can you give an example about positive and negative stories that you just mentioned?
Oh, yes and no. I have examples, and I can dig up examples, but generally we let people decide what is good and what is bad. So we let people submit the story, and then this is following, by the way, Dave Snowden is handling anthropology. So basically, we ask people to submit a micro narrative, and then we let them self-signify that micro narrative. So the thing is that one of those signifiers was this story positive, neutral? Did you feel glad about this, basically? Was this a positive result, or are you neutral on this, or was it negative? And we don't dig in more than that. So we let people decide. If they feel that this was a good decision, then they say so. It's not like I'm deciding that this was a bad decision because it did not lead to more sales, for example. That would, then I would apply my own kind of biases to the situation.
Thank you. Let's take the next one. Do your triads and cubes always have a peak? How can we read the fitness landscape you were showing?
Okay, so this is indeed, this is not a heat map, this is a landscape. That's entirely right. And the landscape in this regard, it's colored in such a way that the peak is always the most saturated part. And then the valleys are the least saturated. So this is always, yes, there is always going to be a highest peak, so to speak. So yes. I'm not sure if I was able to answer that question properly, but yes, there is always a highest peak.
Thank you. Can you then also open up to you a little bit what is complex, or what do you mean? Because people have different definitions of complex.
Yeah, okay. So the definition of complex that I like to use is if an action is likely to have unanticipated side effects, then it's complex. So that means that if you are able to plan or analyze, if I might be personally incapable of or don't necessarily have the skills or experience to analyze and find the results. So let's say my car is giving funny noises, and what I can do is I can take it to or I can hand it over to my cousin who is a trained mechanic, and he will look at it and he will kick it and he will do some interesting stuff, and then it might be fixed. Okay, and for him, opening up the engine is not likely to have any unanticipated side effects. It's complicated, but it's doable. He's been doing it for years and decades. Okay, for me, I'm not a car engineer or car mechanic. And so opening up the engine is I I wouldn't do it, because frankly it could be how will I get it together again? Okay, will it run after I'm done with it? So it's super likely to have side effects that I might be apprehensive about and that I can't plan for or anticipate. So that's complex for me, even though it might be complicated for someone else. Okay, so that's how I define it. A complex situation is a situation that can have or is likely to have unanticipated side effects.
Thanks. Then there's a question: how many people must participate in order to have relevant results when
we
mapping?
Need to have an absolute minimum of 100 answers. And that's already kind of cutting it very, very short. 200 is better, 500 or 1,000. Now, if we can get, and that's the number of responses, and everyone then can submit more than one. So if I had my way, I would have every single employee of a company submit one story every day. Then we come into the tactics of how to collect stories. There's different ways to do it. You can make it, or you can ask, for example, the Scrum Masters in the organization to step up and physically collect stories and make sure that people are actually collecting those stories by using the data and creating changes and making sure that people understand that this is what we have learned by listening to you, submitting those stories. We have learned a lot of stuff and people have been able to contribute. And so we are now seeing these changes. We can also get kind of a bit of interest going in the organization. But generally, we would need the more the better, and the absolute minimum I would say is 100 stories. If you have less than 100, it's like it's not enough to draw any conclusions really.
Thanks. How would you compare the ABID model to Eo Young's CDE model?
Okay, that's an interesting. Glenda Eo Young and her container model. Okay, I need to think about that. It's not something that I would like to take a stand on right now.
Yeah, you can also maybe
model,
answer it later on, or when we make the blog or something like this.
The ABID model is more kind of hands-on, as I understand it, as I see it personally. It's slightly more practical, even though both are a bit kind of abstract. Okay, not a good answer there, but I need to think about that for a while before I dig in. Don't know enough about the CDE model to be able to say.
Thanks. Has there then ever been a case where people don't participate enough?
In submitting the stories?
In submitting stories, I think, yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This is the big problem general that we are facing. We are imposing something on people. So we are starting OrgScan and we are imposing, you need to submit, one story a week or something. And people feel kind of reluctant to do so. They don't understand why. It's again something managers come and say, we need to do this, you need to do that. And it's like submitting your expense reports and you need to jump through these hoops and so on. There are tactics, I already touched on them. Some of them, Scrum Masters, for example, and asking them, trying to explain to them first why this is important, and then asking them to step up and help out. We've seen companies having, for example, you have a couple of trainees, summer interns, that suddenly you have 5 summer interns at the end of the summer starting to work in the autumn, and nobody knows what to do with them. So what you do is you take them, you give them iPads, and you bring them down to the company canteen, and you ask them to stand while people are standing in line waiting to pick up lunch. You ask them questions. Basically, you go through, tell me a story about what has happened lately, a decision that was happening lately, and then they ask people, okay, can you push the buttons here and decide where you are going. So that actually works quite nicely. We had another one where people, there were these iPads, people could pick up and submit their stories, and then they were able to pick up a piece of candy on the way out. And we had another one where if the team submits, basically bribery at this point. So if the team submits 1 story per person per week for 2 months straight, everyone gets a movie ticket. But these tactics get easier after a while. People will, over time, start understanding that actually, this is the survey, and then we have the results, and we can see that things are changing, and this is good stuff. And so we can continue submitting these stories. That's generally a good thing, I would say.
Nice.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we are also running out of time, and unfortunately some people are already dropping out. So I think we should cut the session here. Very big thanks, Martin, to you for presenting today. And thanks for all the good questions and all the comments also to you who have been participating today. Hope to see you in our upcoming webinars. Principle 2 will be in November, and already in the end of this month, we're going to speak about our corporate learning program. So stay in touch and hope to see you there. And you will all have an email after the session as well that participated. So you can look forward to that. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at any time, and we're happy to help you. And we hope to see you next time. Bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks.